So after you look at the descriptive statistics of your data, which we did in the previous video, which is about the mean, the average, centiles, and maybe some kind of a pivot table with the help of table command in Stata. The next, of course, is to look at graphs. And if you have not watched the previous video, what you have to do, you have to open this data code 1 Ames Homes. You have to obviously load the data and proceed to line 51, where we will start with histograms. So in this example, again, it's an introductory course. I will look at histogram and a scatter plot. In the future video, we'll also look at time series graph, but you will see how powerful is this functionality where you can save it, you can print it, and look at your data. So again, histogram, let's start with a simple example, histogram sale price. If you run it, you will see that the distribution of the sale price across different houses, right? You see that the majority of the houses, they are located here in around $180,000 per house, and we have some extremely expensive, probably like mansions, like $600,000 for these houses. So, and we have this kind of skewed distribution, right? So if you model it, of course, it may make sense to use log, have a more equal, less skewed distribution. But we'll talk about that later when we build some regression models. So that's the simplest one. Of course, you can do better. So for example, you can change the width of a bin, right? So the previous histogram automatically determined how big should be this bin. So let me use a bin of $100,000. So I'll have fewer bins and they will go by this step of 100,000. And you see that I just have these very, very thick bins, and again, sometimes you want to have the control, right, over how many bins to include into your histogram. And you observe here that we have a density, right? Sometimes it's not convenient. Sometimes you want to look at the frequency, how many exactly houses are there. And if I add after comma this option freq, then you see I have my frequency of houses, right? So around 400 plus houses, again, will be in this range of $170,000, $180,000, right? And just maybe a few close to zero will be this extremely expensive houses. Again, so this histogram, it's very informative, and we can learn about the properties of our sale variable. And of course, sometimes you want to add color. So for example, let's change color to green, right? And of course, you can choose the color of your choice. You can specify RGB if you want. If you have a specific corporate color brand book, you can also do that. Again, not in this course, but you can Google it and find how to do that. And let me use a bin width of 20,000 again, because 100,000 looks like too much, right? Of course, in Stata, you have to experiment. Sometimes you have to rerun the same code maybe like 5 times before you find the exact correct formulation. And I want to add two titles, right? So instead of frequency, I will use Y title, which is number of houses. So again, it's very important to use exactly the correct symbols here, like this double quote mark, because otherwise, and Stata is very picky about that. If you use the wrong symbol, you'll get the error message. So again, I recommend that you adapt this particular code, which works perfect, to your tasks, right? Because again, the easiest way to learn something is to replicate and then to adapt for your purposes, right? And again, this code will be available for you to download. And for the X title, instead of the sale price, I will use the sale price USD. So let's run this particular line of command. And you see indeed that my color is green. And also I have changed the titles of my X and Y axis. In addition, sometimes you want to look at your data in some kind of different views. For example, there is a variable called year sold. So let's look how prices are different by year sold. So, and if I run this particular command, it actually doesn't look very good, right? Well, in principle, maybe you still understand that the data runs from 2006 to 2010. You see that the distribution is approximately similar, but maybe it's kind of too much, right, to put these 5 years on a single histogram. and maybe you want to do something about that. So for example, let's limit the years to the last 2 years. So you can add to this command this option if before comma, before the other options that you specify. And I want to build a histogram for sale price, but only for years after 2008, which will include 2009 and 2010. And also I will use frequency instead of density, right? Because you see here that on my vertical axis, it's kind of a little bit crowded here, right? So let's use the frequency option. So if I run this command in line 64, I'll get this more adequate picture, right, which you can now use in your report, right, or in your term paper or in your research. And of course, we run these codes and graphs in order to put them somewhere, and you always want to save it in some format, for example, as PDF file. So there is this command graph export, and then you provide the title of your graph, and also don't forget this option replace, because it will allow you to avoid errors in the future, right? Because it'll be complaining that, okay, I cannot overwrite or something, right? So that's a good idea to use this replace font option if you later are going to update this code and to rerun it. To practice these and many additional Stata tools, please check out the description for a coupon code to my new course, Jumpstart Stata into Hours. Thank you.